I've also added another website, which also speaks to what we're saying today about war and children. This is another one of the true stories that in 1980, I ran for president of the United States. I ran a write-in candidate for president of the United States against Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter. And it was really on the basis of policy, because I had faulted Jimmy Carter's policy in terms of Iran saying, release the hostages so that we can leave. I always advocated that he should say, this is our home under international law, under Islamic law, this is our home, please leave. And just take that as the policy and work in that direction rather than go to war against these people. So in 1980, what I said was that the policy of the United States should be that we would never again make war against a people or a nation, that we would instead use a police model. My history and background is I'm a police officer. I wrote policy for the police in the 1960s and 70s. And my approach to these kinds of problems is a law enforcement, but a professional law enforcement, the very best of law enforcement, not the bigoted cop who might overreact and abuse his discretion and power, but the true sense of law enforcement in a peaceful society in which we ourselves police ourselves. And we do so at the lowest level possible and resist federalization of law enforcement particularly. And that is my approach in 1980. So I said, we will never again make war against a nation or a people again, but instead, if the president is convinced that someone like Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi or Kim in North Korea or some other petty dictator in some ways represents a threat to the United States, then we make our case to Congress, and Congress issues an arrest warrant for this person, which simply means that this identified person is an outlaw. Is outside of the law. So as we deal with that country within the law, that person then becomes identified as someone who is outside the law in our minds, even within the country where he or she may be. And what that means is that at the same time you file a complaint in the World Court of Justice in which you demand that particular individual show personally in court and defend his or her government before the World Court of Justice as being a threat to the rest of the world. These are things that can be done quickly and easily because it's just simply a matter of policy. We have to realize that we are wasting billions and billions and billions of wasteful armaments every day. The last thing I did, which, by the way, that I lost the election in 1980. But I did drive up the coast in my car, and I checked into a hotel adjacent to the Holiday Inn where the world news media had gathered at the foot of the mountain when Ronald Reagan was just being installed as president up above all of us. And I went there and checked in, and then I drove over to the Holiday Inn, and I went to the bar because nothing was happening. And here was the world's news media to the extent that it was represented in the bar that day. And I held my final press conference of the election in which I conceded the election and did not demand a recount. But on my way out, I stopped by the press office at the Holiday Inn there, and I left a personal letter that I had written in my hotel room that morning to President Reagan. And in it, I said simply this, as we're looking at the power of the Soviet Union at this point, as you're wanting to increase our power to overcome the threat of the Soviet Union. And I said, before you do that, many of their missiles may not be all that real or work all that well. maybe you ought to go kick a few tires before you make a purchase in terms of buying wasteful weapons. I don't remember exactly what I said. I would treasure it if his library preserved any of the papers from that time. I would be interested in seeing what I said at that time. That's my recollection, as best I recall. But we know that there was, in fact, a gigantic buildup. The Soviet Union did, in fact, collapse. I don't know that it was that direct of a result. I think that it would have happened in the same way, probably, even because of the worldwide spread of information had just simply overwhelmed the Soviet Union. There was too much knowledge and information coming in from the West to control the population like that. And the oligarchs had to take control, and they did. And so we are here confronting a very complex world if you look at it from a larger view. And, we are, the resurgent Soviet Union, and now Russia, with President Putin clearly in control, does in fact represent a threat, not necessarily because of its military threat, but the fact that its military threat is in the control of perhaps I don't want to say a gangster reign. It is just that there is endemic crime within Russia at a very high level, and leave it at that. But on the other hand is our relationship with China, and to a certain extent, China, Japan, and Korea are all really interrelated, because actions we took back in the past have produced the results that are on the table today when we look at these nations and the forms of governments they have. And as we are getting ready, preparing for negotiations with North Korea, it is well that we accept our role in producing the sentiments that will be brought to that table by the other side, because here's a reality of history. I dedicate a chapter in the China book to what happened with the United States and the nation, the Kingdom of Korea, that existed at the turn of the 20th century. And we, in terms of making our peace treaties with the nations of Asia at that time, entered into a mutual defense treaty with Korea, with the Kingdom of Korea. And in doing so, we guaranteed them at a very high level. And then as Japan began to encroach upon and threaten and begin its invasion of Korea, we did nothing. Diplomatically, we did nothing, even though we were. What it is diplomatically, it is an international shame that we allowed Japan to then invade and occupy and colonize Korea during all the years that they did. That said, we then have to move forward, if we're looking at Korea, to the end of World War II, when, again, as the result of our inaction when Japan invaded Manchuria and then into northern China, we and the rest of the world did not come to the defense of these countries, which, had we, World War II may not have ever occurred to a certain extent, because our inaction there also encouraged Hitler and Mussolini in doing what they did in Europe. So we have to look at the consequences of our action. And one of them is, let's look at the end of World War II, where all of these forces are coming to bear, with the Soviet Union coming in, with China now teetering entirely toward Mao's communism, that we had to deal with that situation. And we did so by dividing Korea between the forces of Russia and China and South Korea and the United States in the form of the United Nations. And so we went to war there as a police action on behalf of the United Nations. So my question today is why is the President of the United States negotiating an end to a United Nations action? I mean, I don't know. It seems to me that that if we are in fact at the table threatening to devastate North Korea, then let's remember that we did it once. In the Korean War, the United States bombed North Korea to oblivion. It leveled every single city, every single building, every single village, until the head of the Air Force simply said, there are no longer any targets left to bomb. There are no two bricks, one on top of the other, in all of North Korea. So let us now, for a second, imagine how many thousands and thousands of them were children. Right? Well, there we are. That's what we're talking about today. War kills children, and that is inhuman. That is a violation of our human rights as people all over this world. The thing we share today is that we are the people. We are under governments at different places under different conditions. But to the extent that there is any validity in those governments, they are by the consent of the governed. By whatever form of law that it is then organized, it is because the people consent to be governed under those conditions. And that is what I believe as a matter of philosophy. You ask me, why do I do what I do? Well, I do this because of my underlying philosophy. It is a clear fact that I have, in doing the things that I have done, I have approached it from a spiritual point of view, and that is the subject of a book that is unpublished, but it is ready to be published as a book on the history of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and is an attempt to get to the very bottom of the law of that ancient land. And I basically take it back to a further point in time when Abraham first came into the Promised Land, before he was ever taken to Egypt, and perhaps centuries or more before Moses appeared with the Levites to impose the Ten Commandments on the Israeli people. But going back to that point in time when Abraham had to go rescue some of his kinfolks from surrounding kings, and he returned and was succored. He was given relief and blessing by the king of Jerusalem, who is the king of righteousness. That is the translation of it. But at Jerusalem, Abraham came there and gave a tenth of the of the booty that he had just collected in his war, and gave that to the king of Salem, Jerusalem, Melchizedek. And there is the essence of the law from which all other law in the Bible flows, because what that is that it is righteousness. It is the concept of righteousness. And the way it works is this, is that the one who, the actor, knows whether the act is done in a righteous way. And the person on the other side of the action also knows whether it was done in a righteous way. It's not a complicated set of laws. And in fact, in the book that I am preparing, where I draw upon my work in publishing the Dead Sea Scrolls and the work of others such as Elaine Pagels in the Gnostic Gospels, and I try to bring together as best I can from a lawyer's point of view what truly happened 2,000 years ago, as best we can know and understand from the books that we now have, which include the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Gnostic Gospels, among others. But so essentially, what it is that the philosophy that flowed from all of that is that we have to act and live in a way that doesn't harm others, that we seek the gentle path instead of the warlike path. We will, what we have, and we have achieved today. If you can share with me this moment, that what is being sent to you in terms of this video has gone through so very many electronic processes that it is truly magical, and that we can do that at a time when a boy was born and we had workhorses and we didn't have indoor plumbing and we used kerosene lamps, and that is the world I was born into. And I've been fortunate to live these 77 years now, and to be at this point to say that I am acting today for the children of Iraq, the children of the Holocaust case, the children of Gaza, the children of Palestine, the children wherever they may be in these crazy wars that are being fought with these horribly violent, human-killing weapons, has to cease. It just simply has to stop. And we can do that as a matter of policy. We do not have to make war against other nations to achieve what is best for our people and the other people on this fragile earth that we share. And it is fragile. I mean, if we don't